Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Imagine finding an old Washington quarter in a collection, coin jar, inherited box, or even loose change and noticing something interesting. There is no mint mark on the coin. At first, it may look like an ordinary quarter, but once you begin examining the date, design, condition, surfaces, and mint mark area, the story becomes much more fascinating. In today's video, we are taking a very detailed look at the coins. Coin number 1. This 1968 Washington quarter with no mint mark. At first glance, it may look like an ordinary 25-cent piece, but coins from this era have a fascinating history, and the right combination of condition, strike quality, errors, varieties, and authentication can make an otherwise common coin much more interesting to collectors. In today's video, we are taking a detailed look at the 1968 Washington quarter without a mint mark, including its history, design, composition, minting background, condition, collectible characteristics, and the claimed market value of $132. Most importantly, we will explain why collectors should never assume that every old quarter with no mint mark is automatically worth a fortune. The 1968 Washington quarter is part of an important period in American coinage history. By 1968, the United States Mint had already transitioned away from the traditional 90% silver composition used for circulating quarters through 1964. Beginning in 1965, Washington quarters were produced using a copper-nickel-clad composition because the rising price of silver had made the older silver composition increasingly expensive for everyday coinage. The 1968 Philadelphia issue was therefore a clad quarter rather than a traditional silver quarter. This distinction then is extremely important because many people assume that every quarter from the 1960 heirs contains silver. That is not the case. A 1968 quarter without a mint mark is generally a Philadelphia minted clad quarter. The absence of a mint mark on this coin is also not automatically an error. Philadelphia traditionally produced coins without mint marks, and the 1968 Washington quarter is one of those examples. PCGS explains that from 1932 through 1979 Philadelphia-produced Washington quarters generally carried no mint mark, while the location of mint marks on Washington quarters changed during the series. For 1968 and later coins, the mint mark is found on the obverse, near Washington's neck. Therefore, if you examine a normal 1968 Washington quarter and find no letter beside Washington's neck, that can simply indicate that the coin was struck at Philadelphia. The production numbers also give us important context. Approximately 220.7 million 1968 Washington quarters were produced at Philadelphia, making the date relatively common in comparison with genuinely scarce Washington quarter issues. Coin references list a Philadelphia mintage of about 220, 731,000, or 220, 731,500 pieces, depending on the source's reporting convention. That means the date itself is not rare merely because it lacks a mint mark. Instead, collectors need to examine the individual coin carefully to determine whether it possesses exceptional quality, a recognized variety, an unusual minting error, or some other characteristic that could create a substantial premium. Now let's talk about the phrase black condition, because this is where coin collecting terminology becomes extremely important. Black condition is not a standard Sheldon grading designation used by professional grading services such as PCGS or NGC. A coin can become dark, brown, gray, blackened, stained, toned, corroded, or chemically altered, but those descriptions do not replace a professional numerical grade. If a 1968 quarter has a dark or black appearance, collectors should determine whether that color represents natural toning, environmental damage, corrosion, cleaning residue, or another surface condition. A dark appearance by itself does not automatically make a coin rare or valuable. In fact, collectors should be especially careful when evaluating coins with unusual colors. Natural toning can sometimes be attractive and desirable, while severe discoloration, corrosion, burns, chemical exposure, or artificial treatment can reduce a coin's appeal. This is why photographs alone are not enough to establish a six-figure value. A professional examination is necessary if someone believes a seemingly ordinary coin could actually be an extremely valuable error or variety. Let's take a closer look at the obverse. The front of the 1968 Washington quarter features the famous portrait of George Washington facing left. The word Liberty appears above his portrait, while the date 1968 is positioned below. The inscription "In God We Trust" appears on either side of Washington's portrait. One of the most important areas to inspect is the location near Washington's neck. On coins struck at facilities that used a mint mark during this period, the appropriate letter could appear there. On the Philadelphia issue, there is no mint mark. That absence is normal for the Philadelphia 1968 quarter and should not automatically be interpreted as a missing mint mark error. The reverse features the classic Washington quarter eagle design. A bald eagle with outstretched wings dominates the center, surrounded by inscriptions including United States of America, E pluribus unum, quarter dollar, and the denomination. When evaluating a potentially valuable coin, the reverse should be examined just as carefully as the obverse. Collectors look for unusual doubling, die characteristics, missing design details, striking abnormalities, cracks, cuds, laminations, off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchets, and other genuine mint-made errors. The edge of the 1968 Washington quarter is reeded. This is another useful identification feature. The coin measures approximately 24.3 millimeters in diameter and weighs around 5.67 grams with a copper-nickel-clad composition. These specifications can help collectors distinguish an authentic quarter from altered or counterfeit pieces. A scale accurate to at least 1/100th of a gram can be useful as a preliminary screening tool, although weight alone can never prove authenticity. NGC's current information similarly shows that circulated 1968 Washington quarters generally have relatively modest values, while exceptionally pristine examples can command much higher prices. NGC notes that as of July 2026, circulated examples are generally valued in the range of roughly 30 cents to 85 cents, while pristine uncirculated pieces can reach much higher amounts in the marketplace. This reinforces a critical lesson for every coin collector. Condition matters enormously, but a very high advertised value must be supported by a specific rarity, error, variety, provenance, or exceptional certified grade. This does not mean that unusual 1968 quarters should be ignored. Quite the opposite. The best approach is to inspect them carefully. The exciting possibility in coin collecting is that a coin can look ordinary at first, but reveal an unusual characteristic under magnification. However, collectors need to distinguish between a genuine mint-made error and damage that happened after the coin left the mint. For example, an off-center strike occurs when the planchet is not properly positioned during striking, causing the design to be displaced toward one side. A dramatic off-center strike can be collectible, particularly when the date remains visible and the error is substantial. A clipped planchet can also be interesting because the blank itself was improperly cut before striking. Die cracks and retained cuds can create unusual raised or missing areas of design. Doubled dies may show repeated or doubled portions of lettering, numbers, or design elements. Each type of error has its own characteristics and must be authenticated carefully. Another important area is the coin's surfaces. If your 1968 quarter appears black, do not immediately clean it. Cleaning is one of the most common mistakes made by inexperienced collectors. Scrubbing, polishing, rubbing, chemical dipping, or using household substances can permanently damage the surfaces and leave hairline scratches or unnatural appearance. A coin that might have been collectible can become less desirable after improper cleaning. In general, collectors should leave potentially valuable coins in their original state until they understand what they have. If you believe your coin is exceptional, the next step is authentication and professional grading. Companies such as PCGS and NGC provide professional grading services that can identify the coin, assign a grade, and where appropriate, recognize varieties or errors. Certification can make a major difference because buyers are generally more comfortable paying significant amounts for a coin whose identity and condition have been independently evaluated. Another fascinating detail is that the 1968 Washington quarter belongs to the Type II clad era. Washington quarters transitioned from the 90% silver composition to copper-nickel clad beginning in 1965. This change was one of the most significant events in modern American coinage. The 1968 issue therefore represents an important chapter in the history of the United States Mint, even though the ordinary coin itself may not be particularly rare. The history of the Washington quarter itself goes back to 1932, when the coin was introduced to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. The design became one of the longest-running American coin designs. Over the decades, the quarter changed composition, minting practices, mint mark placement, and eventually design, but the familiar portrait of Washington remained a recognizable part of American currency. Collectors should also remember that the lack of a mint mark is meaningful only when considered within the historical context of that particular year. Philadelphia's practice of producing coins without a mint mark means that a blank area where a mint letter might otherwise appear can be completely normal. In other words, no mint mark is not synonymous with error. This distinction is essential for anyone searching through rolls, jars, inherited collections, or pocket change. Now let's imagine you have a 1968 Washington quarter that appears extremely dark. What should you do? First, handle it carefully by the edges. Avoid touching the surfaces unnecessarily because fingerprints can leave oils and residues. Second, examine the coin under good lighting. Third, use magnification to inspect the lettering, date, mint mark area, and major design elements. Fourth, weigh the coin and compare its basic specifications. Fifth, look for unusual mint-made characteristics rather than simply focusing on its color. You should also photograph both sides of the coin clearly. Take one full obverse photograph, one full reverse photograph, and close-ups of anything unusual. If you see doubling, cracks, missing details, an unusual edge, or an apparent striking error, capture those areas at high resolution. This documentation can be useful when seeking an expert opinion. This distinction is especially important because online coin videos sometimes use extremely large numbers to attract attention. A six-figure headline can encourage people to search their change, which can be fun and educational, but it can also create unrealistic expectations. The real excitement comes from learning how to identify authentic rarity. If you discover a coin worth a significant amount, it should be possible to explain exactly why it is valuable. For example, suppose a coin has a dramatic and authenticated mint error. In that situation, the error itself can become the major source of value. Suppose another coin has an extraordinary certified grade that places it among the finest known examples. Then the population of comparable coins and auction records become important. If a coin has a rare variety, collectors may compare it with known examples and recognized references. These are much stronger foundations for a high valuation than simply saying the coin is old or has no mint mark. The population data for the 1968 quarter also demonstrate why condition matters. PCGS's population report records examples across different grades, including a relatively small number in the highest grades. This shows that while many 1968 quarters were produced, finding one that survives with extraordinary preservation can be a different challenge. This is where coin collecting becomes especially interesting. Rarity does not always mean low mintage. A coin can have a large original mintage but become difficult to find in exceptional condition because most examples entered circulation. Contact marks, scratches, abrasions, weak strikes, environmental exposure, and improper storage can prevent coins from achieving top grades. As a result, condition rarity can sometimes create a premium, even when the original production number was high. When looking at a 1968 Washington quarter, pay particular attention to Washington's cheek, jaw, hair, and other high points on the obverse. These areas can show contact marks very easily. On the reverse, examine the eagle, feathers, lettering, and open fields for scratches or marks. A coin that has remained untouched since production can have dramatically better surfaces than one that spent decades circulating in pockets and cash registers. Luster is another important characteristic. Original mint luster can give an uncirculated coin a distinctive appearance when rotated under light. A coin that has been heavily cleaned may display unnatural brightness, hairlines, or a flat appearance rather than the original cartwheel-like luster expected from a genuine uncirculated piece. Strike quality is also important. Two coins of the same date can have different levels of detail because of variations in dies and striking pressure. Strongly struck coins can retain crisp design elements, while weak strikes may show less detail. Professional grading considers multiple factors, not just how shiny or old a coin looks. It is also wise to be cautious when dealing with buyers who make dramatic claims without providing evidence. If someone says your ordinary quarter is worth tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, ask why. What exact variety is it? What error does it have? What grade is it? Is the coin certified? Are there documented auction results for comparable pieces? If those questions cannot be answered, the valuation should be treated with skepticism. Next coin number 2. This 1970 Washington quarter, without a mint mark, in very fine condition, with a claimed market value of $127, we will explore the coin's history, design, composition, minting location, grading, possible errors, condition, collector demand, and the important question of whether a normal example can really command such an extraordinary price. The absence of a mint mark on the 1970 Philadelphia quarter is normal. During this period, Philadelphia-produced Washington quarters did not carry a P mint mark. PCGS explains that Philadelphia coins through 1979 generally had no mint mark, while the mint mark location on Washington quarters from this era was on the obverse, near Washington's hair ribbon. The P mint mark did not become standard on Philadelphia Washington quarters until 1980. That means that when you hold a 1970 quarter and look at the area around Washington's portrait, finding no mint mark can actually be exactly what you should expect from a Philadelphia issue. The coin does not become rare merely because the mint mark area is blank. Instead, collectors need to investigate the coin's grade, surface quality, strike, varieties, errors, and overall preservation. This does not make the 1970 quarter uninteresting. In fact, it makes the examination even more important. Coin collecting is not simply about finding an old date. It is about understanding what makes one individual coin different from another. Two quarters can have the same date and mint, yet one may be worth face value while another can command a premium because of exceptional preservation, a major minting error, or an unusual certified grade. The 1970 Washington quarter belongs to the clad era of the Washington quarter series. Unlike Washington quarters dated 1964 and earlier, which were struck in 90% silver, the 1970 issue uses a copper-nickel clad construction. PCGS lists the coin as 75% copper and 25% nickel over a pure copper center, with a diameter of approximately 24.30 millimeters and a weight of 5.67 grams. This change in composition is one of the most important developments in American coinage history. Rising silver prices and concerns about coin shortages helped push the United States Mint toward clad coinage, beginning in 1965. The new copper-nickel quarters looked remarkably similar to the older silver pieces, but their composition was completely different. By 1970, the clad quarter had become a standard part of everyday American commerce. Next, examine the mint mark area. On the 1970 Washington quarter, this area is on the obverse near Washington's hair ribbon. A Denver coin should have a D mint mark, while the Philadelphia issue has no mint mark. The absence of a letter on a Philadelphia 1970 quarter is therefore expected, not automatically evidence of a missing mint mark error. Now, let's focus on the phrase very fine condition. Very fine, often abbreviated VF, describes a circulated coin that has experienced noticeable wear but still retains substantial detail. A professional grading service may assign a numerical grade such as VF20, VF25, VF30, or AF35, depending on the amount of wear and the overall quality of the surfaces. A 1970 quarter in genuine very fine condition should show clear details of Washington's portrait, although the highest points will display some flattening from circulation. Hair details may be somewhat worn, and the cheek, jaw, and other high areas can show contact marks and abrasions. On the reverse, the eagle's feathers and other design elements should remain sufficiently visible for the coin to qualify as very fine rather than a lower grade. The large mintage is an important reminder that rarity cannot be determined simply by age. A coin that is more than 50 years old may still be common if hundreds of millions of examples were produced. Age is only one factor in numismatics. Mintage, survival rate, condition rarity, demand, varieties, errors, and documented auction performance are all important. There is another fascinating comparison to make. In 1970, the Philadelphia Mint produced about 136.42 million Washington quarters without a mint mark, while Denver produced more than 417 million quarters with the D-mint mark. The Denver issue was therefore much larger in production. This means that simply finding a 1,970 quarter without a mint mark does not mean you have found the rarest version of the date. The 1,970 quarter also has a proof issue from San Francisco. Proof coins are specially manufactured for collectors and can display sharper details, mirrored fields, and specially prepared surfaces. A regular 1,970 Philadelphia quarter without a mint mark should not be confused with a proof simply because it looks shiny or unusual. Now, let's discuss what could actually make a 1,970 Washington quarter valuable. One possibility is a genuine minting error. Errors occur when something goes wrong during the manufacturing process. Some errors are minor and may carry only a small premium, while dramatic errors can become highly collectible. An off-center strike is one example. If the blank planchet is improperly positioned when the dies strike it, the resulting coin can have the design shifted toward one side. A dramatic off-center strike that still shows the date can be particularly interesting. The larger and more clearly documented the error, the greater its potential collector appeal. The edge should also be inspected. The 1,970 Washington quarter has a reeded edge, and the clad construction can sometimes reveal unusual characteristics. If you notice something strange on the edge, photograph it carefully rather than immediately assuming it is a rare error. Weight is another useful diagnostic tool. A normal 1,970 clad Washington quarter weighs approximately 5.67 grams. If your coin weighs significantly more or less than expected, that may warrant further investigation. However, a weight difference does not automatically prove an error. Dirt, corrosion, damage, altered surfaces, or inaccurate scales can all affect measurements. The diameter is approximately 24.30 millimeters. A digital caliper can be used carefully to check the coin's diameter. Again, this is only an initial screening method. Professional authentication is still necessary if the coin appears to have an extraordinary error. Now let's talk about the surfaces of a very fine coin. Collectors should examine the fields around Washington's portrait and the eagle. Look for scratches, rim damage, cleaning marks, corrosion, spots, stains, and unusual texture. A coin that has been aggressively cleaned can lose much of its natural collector appeal. This is especially important if you believe your 1,970 quarter is valuable. Never polish it simply because you think making it shiny will increase its value. In professional numismatics, the opposite can happen. Cleaning can leave permanent hairlines and unnatural surfaces, potentially lowering the coin's desirability. If the coin has dark or unusual toning, leave it alone until you understand what you are looking at. Natural toning and environmental damage are not the same thing. A professional grader can determine whether the surfaces are acceptable for certification or whether they have been adversely affected. The transition from silver to clad coinage is a major part of the historical story behind this quarter. The Washington quarter had been produced in silver from 1932 through 1964, but beginning in 1965, circulating quarters used the new clad composition. The 1970 quarter therefore belongs to an important transitional era in United States coinage. Next coin number 3. This 1974 Washington quarter with no mint mark. The date catches your attention. The surfaces look noticeably circulated, and the coin appears to be in very fine condition. Then you hear a claim that a coin like this could be worth as much as $121. That immediately raises an exciting question. Could an ordinary-looking 1974 Washington quarter really be worth a fortune? In today's video, we are going to take a deep look at the 1974 Washington quarter without a mint mark. Its history, design, composition, mintage, grading, possible errors, collector interest, and the claimed $121,000 value. Before we go any further, there is one extremely important fact that every collector needs to understand. A 1974 Washington quarter without a mint mark is not automatically a rare error. In fact, the Philadelphia Mint intentionally produced 1974 Washington quarters without a mint mark. PCGS explains that Philadelphia-produced Washington quarters carried no mint mark from 1932 through 1979, with the Philadelphia P mint mark becoming standard on Washington quarters beginning in 1980. Collectors look at the complete story of the individual coin. They examine the mint, composition, grade, strike, surfaces, varieties, errors, and documented auction history. This composition is historically significant because the United States Mint had already moved circulating quarters away from traditional silver several years earlier. Rising silver prices and coinage pressures contributed to the introduction of clad coinage in the mid-1960s. By 1974, the clad Washington quarter was firmly established as a regular part of American commerce. Those cracks can transfer to the coins being struck, appearing as raised lines. More dramatic die breaks or cuds can be particularly collectible. Doubled dies are another famous category. Genuine doubled die varieties occur because of a doubling effect during die production, and the doubling can appear on letters, numbers, or design elements. However, many coins that appear doubled are actually affected by machine doubling, die deterioration, scratches, or other forms of damage. Proper attribution is essential. The edge of the 1974 quarter should also be examined. It has a reeded edge, and because the coin is clad, the edge can reveal the layered construction of the piece. Any unusual edge feature should be photographed carefully and examined by an expert before being described as a mint error. Weight is another useful screening tool. A normal 1974 clad Washington quarter weighs approximately 5.67 grams. A precision scale can therefore help determine whether a coin is approximately consistent with its expected specifications. However, weight alone cannot prove an error or authenticity. The diameter should be approximately 24.30 millimeters. If a coin is dramatically outside the expected dimensions, further investigation could be worthwhile. But collectors should remember that damage, wear, corrosion, and inaccurate measuring equipment can produce misleading results. Now let's focus on the condition described in today's topic: very fine. In professional numismatics, very fine is generally represented by grades in the VF range, such as VF20 through VF35. A very fine coin has circulated and shows noticeable wear, but significant design detail remains. On the obverse of a very fine 1974 quarter, Washington's portrait will show visible wear on the highest points. His hair, cheek, jaw, and other raised areas may have some flattening. The coin may also have contact marks, small scratches, and general signs of circulation. On the reverse, the eagle's feathers will show wear, but many of the major details should remain visible. The lettering should still be readable, and the overall design should be clearly recognizable. However, very fine condition should not be confused with mint state condition. A mint state coin has not experienced normal circulation wear, while a very fine coin has clearly been circulated. This distinction can have a major impact on value. One of the biggest mistakes collectors make is assuming that an old coin with attractive color automatically receives a high grade. Professional grading is much more complicated. Graders consider wear, marks, luster, strike quality, surface preservation, and overall eye appeal. If your 1974 quarter appears dark, dull, brownish, gray, or unusually colored, do not attempt to improve it by polishing. Cleaning can permanently damage the surface and may significantly reduce collector appeal. A coin should generally be left in its original condition while you are investigating it. This is especially important if you believe you have discovered a rare coin. Never use abrasive materials, household chemicals, metal polish, toothpaste, or other substances to make the quarter shine. A natural original surface is usually much more desirable than an artificially brightened surface. Professional numismatics. Collectors and dealers compare coins based on precise characteristics. They consider grade, population, rarity, demand, provenance, error status, and actual market transactions. If you are selling a potentially valuable coin, obtain more than one opinion before accepting a major offer. A coin with a suspected rare error should be evaluated independently. Be especially careful if someone pressures you to sell immediately because they claim the coin is worth an enormous amount. Likewise, do not pay a huge amount for a coin simply because an online advertisement claims it is rare. Research the exact variety, check certification numbers when applicable, and compare actual auction results. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the 1974 Washington Quarter, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more videos about rare American coins, Washington Quarter values, Lincoln wheat pennies, Jefferson nickels, Roosevelt dimes, Kennedy half dollars, mint errors, varieties, grading, and hidden treasures that collectors may discover in old collections.